If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
All right, everyone, let's talk about drinking and driving, a decision that will change your whole world. Things will never be the same once you get a DUI because legal fees, time in court are just the beginning. Getting into a crash is another way your world could be irreversibly changed after drinking and driving. Your vehicle may not be the only thing that gets damaged in that crash. You could face a life-altering injury or even death. But you're not the only one who could face those consequences. Your decision to drink and drive could permanently change someone else's world, whether you injure them or leave their loved ones grieving. The next time you're out drinking, call a rideshare, a taxi, a sober friend, or a designated sober driver. Always plan for a safe ride home. The only decision that will change your world for the better is the decision to call for a sober ride. It's never worth it to drive drunk. Don't risk it. Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to break down Trevor Rogers' success during the 2025 season, look at what's behind his success, whether or not it's sustainable going forward, and how he's going to fit into the Orioles' plans for next season. And we're also going to get into some recent promotions down in the minor leagues. But first, as we like to do at the top of every episode, we want to welcome some new patrons to our community, and for that, I will turn it over to Bob.
Yeah, we got 3 new patrons over the past week. We did shout out one at the end of our second episode that we did last Tuesday. That would be Kristen Yates. So once again, Kristen, thank you for signing up. We also had David St. Clair sign up for a year up front at the AAA level. Love it. And Chris Gauker signed up for a monthly single A membership, so that's appreciated as well. Hopefully you guys are able to reap all the benefits of patronhood, I guess we'll call it. Get on that Discord. It's a great community in there. And speaking of which, went to Saturday night's game with a bunch of patrons. We rented out a suite, had a great time, got to meet a bunch of people in person for the first time. A couple people got to see them again, not the first time meeting them. So Eli from the Warehouse Pod, met up with him. We had a picture posted on Blue Sky. It was a great time. Orioles are not winning many baseball games recently, but we at least have some exciting players to watch.
Absolutely. And one of them this season has been Trevor Rogers. After beginning the year on the IL and then going to Norfolk initially after coming off the IL, Rogers has settled in at the major leagues and been very effective for the Orioles. And that continued on Sunday in a win over Houston when he put together one of his best outings of the season, going 7 innings, giving up just 1 run on 5 hits with 9 strikeouts to 3 walks. The left-hander now has a 1.4 ERA through 13 starts this season, which is the lowest ERA by any Orioles pitcher in franchise history through 13 starts. In 83 and a third innings pitched this season, he has struck out 76 batters while walking 19, and his peripheral numbers are pretty good as well. 2.32 FIP, 3.47 xFIP, and it feels weird in what has happened in the past year in the sense that as the Orioles have struggled on the field this season, one of their bright spots has been Rogers, a player that I think a lot of fans were disappointed with after last year's deadline deal that sent Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby to the Marlins in return for Rogers. So looking ahead, Rogers under control for at least one more season. As we talked about on our most recent episode, Bob and I, maybe that's the guy the Orioles look at extending next. But for the here and now, he has been a very effective pitcher. And Nick, I want to start with you here. What have you seen from Rogers this season that has allowed him to be so successful.
You guys are gonna have to tell me. I don't think I've watched him but a couple innings this year. So I can't talk to the stuff. I haven't looked into him or watched him that much. But I don't have many thoughts on Trevor Rogers, to be honest. There's not enough time to do the prospect research I want to. But just generally speaking, like, it's good that he's performing so well, and we can finally maybe put this trade discussion to bed. Just like no need to look at it in the framework of 2024 anymore because that's over. But like looking ahead to this point, like this was the play, I think, with the trade. Believing you could get Rogers to his previous form, even if it takes some time because he's got those additional years of control. And it's really awesome to see this transition of the conversation from like Michael Ash should be fired for this trade and routinely getting beaten down by local fans, local media, national media, even more so, I think. To now, could you maybe try to salvage this trade a little more by moving him at the trade deadline to now, like, should we extend Trevor Rogers? Like, having a genuine conversation about handing Trevor Rogers a multi-year big contract extension. Like, it's another sliver of light in what has been a pretty dark season. But if he can be a quality starter for this team next year, hopefully the discourse around the trade can then just be like both teams won. Like, good for Stowers and Norby finding their footing and having success in Miami. Hopefully Norby's healthy next year and can get that. And at the same time, the Orioles get the major league starter that they wanted. It just took a little bit longer of time, and that's all right. And hopefully next year you can build around him, and we can use, if he's only here for one more year, we can use that one last year to our advantage and make that trade turn out even better when he's helping this team into the playoffs next year.
Yeah, I think there's a few reasons why he's been so good this year. And obviously, look, he's not going to have a 1.5 ERA all the season long, probably. I mean, it's getting pretty close to the end here. He's got 83 innings of a 1.40 ERA. It's pretty good. And the FIP is only 2.32, so it's not like it's been extremely lucky or anything, even though 221 batting average for balls in play against him. So a little bit in play there, obviously. But even if he's like a mid-threes ERA guy moving forward, that's huge for the middle of your rotation. And yeah, like I was saying, I think he's done a few things really well this year to bounce back, and on the Baltimore Banner and some other places, I'm sure. But the Banner sticks out to me. There's been some articles about how he got more confident and what the Orioles did to try to help get him back on track. But I'll just say, from looking at the information I have, in 2021, when he broke out, his average fastball velocity was 94.6. That was down to 92.1 between the Marlins and Orioles last year. And that's back up to 93, which obviously is not back up to where it was at his peak, but it's definitely improved. And I think he's actually, it would probably be higher if he didn't have some of these random early morning starts that apparently he can't ramp up the velocity as much for those, but he's still only 27 years old. Maybe he can go into this offseason, add another half tick or a full tick going into next year to get even better. He's added a sweeper, which is really effective against same-sided hitters, lefty hitters. And really, it's just command. He has the best walk percentage of his career by far, 6%, flat 6%. His previous best was 7.6% in 2023. His strikeout rate is 24.1%, which is as high as it's been since 2021, tied with 2023. And yeah, I think Baseball Prospectus, this was pointed out by Eli. Speaking of Eli, from the Sweet Game on Blue Sky, Stephen Sutton Brown has a really cool plots on through Baseball Prospectus, I believe, that shows just the tunneling and what works, what doesn't from a different kind of perspective. And Rogers' changeup and fastball tunnel really, really well together. So seems like hitters aren't really sure whether it's fastball, changeup until late in the ball's way to the plate. So that certainly helps as well. Just a lot of things going right. You know, can't always, if he's going to pitch this good from now on, he's a stud ace, one of the best pitchers in baseball. But even if he goes back to like a 3 to 4 ERA guy, somewhere in that range, very great middle of the rotation starter, like I said.
If I think back to when this deal was completed, I had said at the time that I thought the trade was as much about 2025, if not more about 2025 than it was 2024, because Rogers, since his breakout rookie season in 2021, had not been the same pitcher. Injuries were a big part of that. And Bob, you just mentioned the fastball velocity going down after that first season was certainly a factor. What I think led to some of the discourse around that trade being so negative from the Orioles side of things was that Rogers just really struggled in the limited time that he had in the major leagues with the Orioles after the deal. And the Orioles, being in a playoff chase at that point, could not afford to have him go out there and have bad start after bad start. So you knew then that this was going to be an opportunity for him to reset. And in some respects, I'm not surprised that he's been successful, but I thought it was going to take him a move to the bullpen, honestly, to get this out of him. Because it's like, all right, yeah, you could hope the fastball velocity goes up. You could hope that this clicks and this clicks. But realistically, it's probably going to have to come out of the bullpen. Well, lo and behold, Rogers has gone into the rotation and not only been a capable starter, but someone who can get deep into games for the Orioles. Just look at his last 5 starts alone. 8 innings against the Cubs on August 1st. 6 against the Phillies in his next start. Then 7 eats in the next 3 starts against the Mariners, Red Sox, and Astros. So those were good teams, by the way. It's not as though Rogers has gone out and faced a lot of bad lineups in this stretch. He has faced teams that are going to the playoffs, and he has outmatched them every step of the way. It's probably not sustainable at this rate. I mean, he's not going to have a sub-2 ERA for the next rest of this season and the next year. Bob, you just mentioned the batting average on balls in play is really low. His home run to fly ball rate is also astronomically low, somewhere around 2%. That's not going to sustain itself. But when you look at how his stuff has improved, now that he's healthy, and it seems like there has been a concerted part from his side and from the Orioles to get his fastball velocity back up a little bit to improve the secondaries, and it has led to this.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think maybe just confidence, maybe just extra tick or so in velocity helped the confidence to be able to be willing to throw it over the plate. And then when you have success, it kind of builds on top of each other. He's not, like you said, he's getting deep into games. He's averaging 6.4 innings per start since he came up from the minor leagues. One of those was that spot start, and then he came back for good a couple weeks later. Yeah, just he looks like a really confident guy on that mound right now, and that's a far cry from at least what articles are saying over the offseason. He was kind of having like a mid-baseball life crisis about confidence and how he's going to get back to performing well. Clearly, it worked, and hats off to him, hats off to the organization. Hopefully, he can keep it up. And yeah, if he's all in on the Orioles, helping him get here, maybe he's willing to sign a little extension for us. 3 or 4 years would be pretty sweet, between $20 and $25 million a year. I did it in my OOTP league, so it's got to be possible in real life, right?
Well, let's touch on that for a minute because, Bob, you and I talked about it a little bit at the end of our emergency podcast on Friday after the Basayo extension. Rogers does feel like one of the more logical extension candidates on the Orioles right now. Now, a lot can change with pitchers because you would have said the same thing about Zach Eflin last year, and now we're not even sure the Orioles are going to give him a qualifying offer when the time comes in a few weeks. But the case for perhaps looking at least a 2 or 3 year extension beyond next season for Rogers is pretty compelling. He is only 27. The stuff that has come back up makes him look like he should be at least a solid major league starter into the future as long as he can stay healthy. And yeah, he's not going to maintain what has been really an ace level pace necessarily, but he could still be a really solid number 3 for you. So with that in mind, Nick, I'll start with you here. Is that extension worthy? Is it at least worth kicking the tires, or do you want to see a little bit more from him before you explore that conversation?
I think you try. And maybe not like something super long term, but yeah, something like 2-3 years, if he's down for that. And it's like without knowing his mindset, but I imagine considering where he was when the Orioles drafted him, and then in the offseason with the Orioles not drafted him, traded for him. And then, you read in the articles in the offseason about like how the Orioles really worked with him on like the workout routine, changing that for the back stuff. Like the Orioles really did put a lot of work into Trevor Rogers. And some of the other quotes too that you've seen, like just seemed like where he's been at mentally. Seemed like he was in a pretty down, dark place mentally. And the Orioles were there to help build all of that back up with into the Trevor Rogers that everybody's watching today. So like maybe that means something to Trevor Rogers. And he says, yeah, like I'm not going to go out. I could enter free agency and maybe I could get a bigger deal, but I could also continue to show everybody, over the next 2 or 3 seasons that this is legit. I'm here to stay. I've got plenty more in the tank. I'll take 2 or 3 more years here with Baltimore. I love it here. I love what they've done for me. They've saved my career. And then I'll go out in free agency in 3 years from now and try to land that final big contract for my career. But yeah, if something like that could work out, by all means, go for it.
Yeah, I just think it's like this weird inflection point where it kind of makes sense from both sides. Like for the Orioles, obviously you'd love to lock up a guy who's coming into his own, or at least bouncing back towards what he showed he could be early in his career. He's only 27 still. He doesn't turn 28 until November. So he could look at this as, if he is a little nervous that, hey, I'm pitching a little above my head now. Let me get some guaranteed money going into next season. If I have a 2 or 3 year extension, 4 years potentially, he could still hit free agency at 30, 31 years old. And if he is able to continue to pitch at least close to what he's been doing this year, then he can certainly get another big contract on the end of that one. So it could make sense from his side. And obviously the Orioles, I'm sure, would love to lock him up. Orioles don't want to do anything higher than 4 years, I doubt, with any pitcher, let alone one with a little bit of risk involved. But 3 or 4 years, I think they would happily do. And I don't think Rogers wants to lock in for 6 or 7 years right now with the chance to either hit free agency after his 28-year-old season, or if you do sign a short extension, 30, 31-year-old season.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, everyone, let's talk about drinking and driving, a decision that will change your whole world. Things will never be the same once you get a DUI because legal fees, time in court are just the beginning. Getting into a crash is another way your world could be irreversibly changed after drinking and driving. Your vehicle may not be the only thing that gets damaged in that crash. You could face a life-altering injury or even death. But you're not the only one who could face those consequences. Your decision to drink and drive could permanently change someone else's world, whether you injure them or leave their loved ones grieving. The next time you're out drinking, call a rideshare, a taxi, a sober friend, or a designated sober driver. Always plan for a safe ride home. The only decision that will change your world for the better is the decision to call for a sober ride. It's never worth it to drive drunk. Don't risk it. Drive sober or get pulled over. Paid for by NHTSA.
This episode brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can get a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help find you options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths and sometimes heights to ensure the power is always flowing, which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
And we'll go now to a different topic on pitching, as we saw several promotions announced as last week's minor league series came to a close. Levi Wells, whose resurgence in Chesapeake this year has been one of the better stories in the Orioles farm system, is getting the bump up to Norfolk for the final weeks of the Tide season, while Luis De Leon, who was recently part of a combined no-hitter at Aberdeen and has put up very strong numbers there, is getting the bump up to Chesapeake. And then Chase Alsop, who after really struggling out of the gate this year and really for the entirety of the first half, has been settling in and pitching much better lately. He's going to get a shot at high A before the season ends as he goes from Delmarva to Aberdeen. And all three pitchers were looking at kind of different stories here. With Wells, you have a guy that was tabbed by many as a breakout candidate coming out of spring training because he had looked good with the Major League club in a few outings. De Leon appeared in the Futures game in spring training, had the opportunity to get to high A this year after an injury and pitched well there. And then in Alsup, someone who a lot of national outlets tabbed as a breakout candidate coming into this season. He unfortunately struggled with his command for much of the first half at Delmarva, but as I just mentioned a moment ago, really had been improving of late. And Nick, I'm going to start back with you here because you shouted out Alsup, I think, in last week's episode at the end of the segment we do at the end, shouting out players outside the top 30 portion of our top 50. And you noted at that point that there had been a little bit of improvement with the command. So what have you been noticing with Alsup lately that's allowed him to be more successful?
Yeah, just looking at the season as a whole, is like 90. He's up to 91 innings so far in his first year, which is pretty legit. I just think the Orioles just kept running him out there too, like tinkering on the fly and go work through it, push those innings up, and maybe something is clicking now. Because I said last week, like I wanted to see him end the year with 2 or 3 more quality outings that he had left before I started to comfortably say something was clicking here. But I think a promotion in the meantime helps as a statement that the Orioles think a lot is going right here. The walks are still high, but I went and looked back. Before the 4th of July, he had a near 27, or since the 4th of July, he's up to a near 27% strikeout rate with a 13% walk rate. Compare that to pre-4th of July numbers, a 20% walk rate with a near 20% strikeout rate with a near 17% walk rate. So that's pretty notable improvement. I don't know, the guy just needed a fireworks show and a shot of America into his veins, I guess. Whatever clicked it's clicking. Like you watch him at the beginning of the year. I know Delmarva had a couple road outings that with fantastic camera views, and I don't think anyone on the Delmarva staff, stuff-wise, compared to Alsup. You could see how lively the stuff was, but he just had no control over it. And now he's pitching more confidently, and you can see him command the strike zone a lot better in some of these outings. So, yeah, I guess just keep harnessing that, and hopefully, next year, at this point next year, we're talking about a guy who's walking 10% instead of 15% of batters, and maybe we'll be cooking with something there.
Yeah, Alsup, he has been awesome. Woohoo, what a great joke. Since his last 3 appearances at Delmarva, it seemed like he had a blow up at the beginning of August where he pitched 1 2/3, gave up 5 runs, walked like 4 or 5 batters, only struck out 1. And then since then, he's been fantastic. Obviously, short sample size, 13 2/3 innings, 1.32 ERA, 24 strikeouts to 9 walks, which 43.6% strikeout rate with 16.4% walk rate, 2.23 FIP to go with that 1.32 ERA. So obviously something, it's either working temporarily or maybe they figured something out finally. It doesn't hurt to bump him up to Aberdeen because also it's not really about who he's facing. It's more about facing himself. And if he's able to throw the ball over the plate consistently, which no, he hasn't until these last 3 starts, basically. So if he does that, he could probably pitch in Double-A right now. His stuff is huge. Like it's really big stuff, but just that command/control. He's honestly, if I'm sure they'll continue to give him starter innings next year, but for me, it's like, let's just see what this guy can do at the back end of a bullpen, move him quickly up the minors, and use him in that role. We have a lot of starting pitching depth. I would love to see the Orioles start guys like Alsup, Zach Fruit. Let's get that on the reliever track going a little bit earlier, but we'll see.
Now, Luis De Leon, young left-hander, put up very strong numbers at Aberdeen, 16 1/3 innings pitched, 3.58 ERA to go to 2.72 FIP, 3.23 xFIP, and a 56% ground ball rate, actually approaching 57%. De Leon is a guy that we have really been high on for a few years. Going back to, I think, when he really first started to appear on the scene down in the FCL, always has put up good strikeout numbers, good ground ball numbers wherever he's been. The problem has been walks and on occasion home runs. This year, he's gotten both of those areas a little bit more under control. And from what I'm seeing in De Leon, there's still some question marks there, but when he's on, there's a real, to me, top 100 prospect profile with that fastball changeup combination from the left side. Not something that you see every day. And there's still work that he has to do to harness it. But I feel like this performance that he put together at Aberdeen is the best that he's been at any level so far in his career.
He has been insane for the month of August. Like, it's ridiculous what he was able to do. And clearly, we've seen flashes in the past. We've liked him quite a bit coming up, signing only for $30,000. And we've been talking about he's got this heavy sinking fastball, doesn't give up a lot of home runs. He gets a ton of ground balls, but he's also got the strikeout stuff on top of it. And man, did he finally was able to put it all together for Aberdeen. 4 starts, basically 3 starts and 1 balk appearance. 1.31 ERA over 20 2/3 innings, was 3-0. Like, that really matters. But 35 strikeouts to 7 walks, which is a 45.5% strikeout rate to a 9.1% walk rate. Incredible. 116 average against, a 1.19 FIP. So he was actually unlucky by getting a 1.31 ERA, but just ridiculous. Very much deserved promotion to AA. And yeah, like Mark said in the chat, he's definitely got us, everybody dreaming a little bit with what he's been able to do recently. He's still young. If he can continue this up in AA and beyond the rest of this year in 2026, then you have yourself a Eduardo Rodriguez maybe type middle of the rotation starter.
And it's even more fun because coming into the year, like when we talked about Luis De Leon, it was a lot of like looking back at 2024, he didn't regress, but he didn't take that jump forward that we were hoping to see. It was just like a fine year. And then he has that 1 inning in the spring breakout game, open up a lot of eyes. And you're like, this is the Luis De Leon that we saw in 2023. Are we going to get him in 2025 now? And then he went MIA for a while there to start the year. And was it elbow or shoulder? I think it was elbow. But like that was barking, I guess, and he missed a couple of weeks. But man, when he came back, you rattled off the numbers. He's been dominant ever since. It's just like it kind of felt we were at this point of like young, exciting arm. Oh, now he's going to hit a wall in high A, and now the injuries start. And now here we are with a career low walk rate this year in high A. And you compare he's at 60 innings in high A this year. He had 60 last year, and the numbers like better across the board. Strikeout rate jumped 4%, walk rate dropped 4.5%. The average against fell from 288 to 204. Like still hovering around a 60% ground ball rate. I mean, he's 22 years old. He can run it up to 97 from the left side. Fangraphs gives him a 70 potential future value grade slider. Like that right there alone is a pretty firm base. I agree. I think it's mid rotation upside, and he's got some time to marinate. I don't think the Orioles are going to rush De Leon. You got to be patient with him. I think if you've been impatient about getting him up to AA, it's going to be a long 2026 and a long 2027. Because I do think I could see him being a guy who takes a little bit longer than some of his other peers, which is fine. But you're trying to tap into that mid-rotation upside arm. And maybe this year was just more about that elbow injury at the beginning of the year, and they're trying to be careful with him, and they unleash him next year. That could be the case as well. But also, he's one of those guys that, again, I'm just so adamant about you can't just take anybody and turn them into a reliever and they'll be better. Like, that's not the case at all. But Luis De Leon, that sinker, that slider, like that is a very firm base. Like I truly do think his upside as like a bullpen demon is almost as exciting as that mid-rotation upside as a starter. But yeah, this is a guy that let him marinate a little bit, and we'll see what we got with him.
He's also an example of why you want to be, a little conservative, a little bit. Don't get too excited too quickly, but still the upside is there with these young international pitchers like Keeler Morphe. The ceiling is still huge, despite this year being pretty much lost. Just electric stuff at a young age can take a lot of time to rein in and know how to sequence and how to command and all that stuff. So great example for the international development, pitching development. Love it.
In Levi Wells, we have someone that has really solidified himself as a prospect this season. Last year, his first full year in pro ball was a little inconsistent. Wells particularly struggling with walks. He goes from high A to double A this year. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this segment, we saw Wells a little bit in spring training with the big league team. And you could see the loud stuff, in particular the hard fastball in those outings. And that got people really excited about him. But at the same time, given some of his struggles from the year before and the fact that pretty much any national scouting report you read on Wells going back to 2023 when he was drafted profiled his reliever risk. This is a guy that I think you wanted to be excited about, but at the same time knew in the back of your mind you had to temper your expectations for a little bit. As it turns out, Wells threw primarily as a starter during his time with the Bay Sox, and although there were some short outings mixed in there, he was able to get out to a starter's workload in several outings, 1 through 5 or 1 through 6. And in particular, he has been very good since the beginning of July. Going back to his first start in July, which was on July 3rd, he's had 28 and 2/3 innings pitched, striking out 39 batters while walking just 13 and posting a 3.45 ERA. The big takeaway from me in that stat line is the strikeout total. Because one thing that you could tell with Wells early on this year was that despite the overpowering stuff, he wasn't necessarily getting a lot of swings and misses. He wasn't necessarily putting batters away with 2 strikes, but he was doing a much, much better job of locating his pitches than he had really at any point in the past. What we've seen in the second half, though, is that the strikeouts have now started to come for Wells. The stuff is the same quality, and he'll have an opportunity here over the final weeks in Norfolk to build on what has been a true breakout season.
Yeah, you noted exactly what I was going to note, that in the beginning of the season up to July, it was more about refining that command, that control, wasn't getting the strikeouts. I think Core Jackson supporter Keith Law was a not a fan of his stuff. He says it might look loud, but it's not getting swings and misses. It's, I can't wait to see this AAA data on his pitches just to see how wrong Keith Law was. But then again, like you said, I have him starting July 10th because July 3rd, he didn't have a big strikeout game, but July 10th through now, he has pitched 24 and 2/3 innings, 37 strikeouts to 12 walks. That's a 33% strikeout rate. Still a decent walk rate for that many strikeouts, 10.7, a 2.78 FIP compared to the 3.65 ERA, whereas in the first half, it was a 2.86 ERA to a 3.09 FIP. Not bad luck, but you just see the difference in the two halves, not quite halves, but yeah, I think Wells, they were limiting his innings just to make sure he stayed on target as far as innings goals for the whole year. And he did have a couple nagging injuries here and there, but man, bare minimum, this guy's going to be a stud reliever and a very good chance to be a workman-like starter as soon as sometime next year.
Yeah, as soon as he makes his AAA debut, I'm gonna have my finger on that generate report button over on TJ Stats website, so I can look at all those beautiful numbers there. I planted my flag last year on Wells just because you look at the baseball card stats, you pull up his player page, you probably weren't very enthused by Wells, especially considering, he was a guy being touted after the draft as someone who could rise very quickly to the major leagues as a reliever. And then he has the shoulder injuries. The walk rates were astronomical at the beginning of last year. But then if you watched him pitch last year in Aberdeen versus the numbers, they did not match. Those two were not the same thing. And they started to come together down the stretch. He ended up having a really solid second half of the year once he returned from his month and a half that he missed from the shoulder injury and really started to settle in. But I thought he probably begins this year back in high A. Honestly, at least for the first little bit. I think the Orioles were justified in doing so, but they clearly saw a lot more in him, moved him right up to Double A, where he was solid. You guys rattled off the numbers there. Another number that I really like from Wells this year, he had 37 innings at home in Bowie, only 2 home runs allowed. So I think that's very impressive as well. Now that he's in AAA, I imagine you probably see him in some shorter stints the rest of the way because he's already up to 75 innings. AAA season runs through the end of September. You probably maybe guess 100 innings is his cap. So if he can try to get close to that, I I do think he's probably going to have an adjustment period here, considering, as he settles into the AAA ball, the MLB ball, the AAA strike zone, AAA hitters. But you talk about the swing and miss there. Yeah, he didn't get a ton of swing and miss throughout the year. Contact was up. Yes, it was better, but I do wonder if he's going to have a little bit of a tougher adjustment period in AAA. I could see him getting hit around a little bit in the beginning, but again, give him time to work with Justin Ramsey. You saw the adjustments over the course of the year in AA. He can do the same here in AAA. And also, when he comes out throwing 2-inning stints and looks good at the same time, they're not killing the starter track. They're not. He's going to come out next year, hopefully be in Norfolk's rotation, keep him stretched out, potentially be a guy who you use as a spot starter next year if you need him. Maybe at this point next year where the conversation is a little bit different. Hopefully health is better for everybody. Levi Wells is having a good year in AAA, and we're saying, could Levi Wells be an asset out of the bullpen come, August, September at the major league level next year? Maybe. I also agree. I think that's probably ultimately where he ends up. And I say that with all the love, just like Chase McDermott, because I think he could eat pretty well out of the bullpen. But yeah, I'm excited to see what the stuff looks like in AAA. Excited to see what his adjustment looks like, and yeah, see that we know he's got some attitude out there on the mound. So I'm ready to see that shine in AAA now.
AAA's rotation to begin next year has a chance to be incredibly exciting. Just say the Orioles get 2 starters, and that pushes Cade Povich and Brandon Young to start the year as depth in AAA. Then you got Trey Gibson, obviously, Levi Wells, Nestor Urman, maybe Jerron Watts-Brown is up there at some point. So yeah, just like the hitters did for a while. Now it's the pitcher's turn to, as you get to that AAA level, it's like anyone could make a debut at any given time. Gotta love it.
We've seen a lot of buzz about Trey Gibson since he made his AAA debut. He's now a few starts into his time at Norfolk. And I don't know that we're necessarily learning anything new about Gibson, but at the same time, everything we've seen from him up to this point is now backed by publicly accessible data. You can go on Baseball Savant and you can see just how good Trey Gibson's pitch mix is. How long is it going to take for that same buzz to generate for Levi Wells?
I don't know if it'll be
taste
to the same extent. I think people will start saying he could close for the Orioles right now, stuff like that. Gibson, yeah, like you said, just not really surprised by anything we've seen, but just confirms all that we thought with the hard numbers. You got to love that. And would love to see Nestor Urman get a chance at some point this year too. I want all the data.
I mean, people were saying that about Levi Wells when we were getting some of that spring training data on him. People like, move him to the bullpen now, move him up. We could use him. Understandably, I get it, but yeah, I think people are going to see his first couple of AAA outings. They're going to be able to look at some stuff, and they're going to remember what they saw in spring training, and you're going to see hopefully that excitement return for a lot of people.
Did you know that driving under the influence of marijuana is illegal? That's right. Driving high could get you a DUI. And if you're wondering if law enforcement can tell when you're driving high, well, everyone else in your life can. Your friends can tell. Your coworkers can tell. Even your parents can tell. So what makes you think law enforcement can't tell? Well, they can. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by NHTSA.
If you work as a manufacturing facilities engineer, installing a new piece of equipment can be as complex as the machinery itself. From prep work to alignment and testing, it's your team's job to put it all together. That's why it's good to have Grainger on your side. With industrial-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure you have everything you need close at hand through every step of the installation. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
We'll now head into our final segment of the show. Last Call, brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located at 1421 Ridgely Street. Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre- or post-game drink. And when you're at the ballpark this year, be sure to check out the beer stand behind home plate where you can get one of Checker Spot's signature beers, The Bird is the Word. And on this segment, we're going to do our normal shout-out of players outside the top 30 portion of our top 50 list for something they've done recently, whether it's been a good game, a good week, or just something interesting in their stat line that we want to point out. And I'm going to start with Bob on this one because he's highlighting the return of a pitcher who had considerable buzz coming into the system 2 years ago out of the draft. Unfortunately, we have not seen a whole lot of him because of an elbow injury, but he is back now. And Bob, what are our thoughts on Kiefer Lord?
I'm excited. I was a huge fan of Kiefer Lord coming out of the draft. He was one of my favorite picks in that draft, which turns out any pick you would have selected as your favorite probably would have worked out for you. But yeah, nice to see he's finally back after going through Tommy John. Let's see what he's got. And he's now, 23 years old. Doesn't turn 24 until next June. So still pretty young for a guy that missed basically 2 full seasons. He had his first outing straight to Delmarva. It's not his professional debut because I forgot, at least in the moment, that he did pitch a game in the FCL late in 2023. He pitched 2 1/3 inning, gave up 1 hit, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. There was a weird incident where I think got the strikeout and then threw the ball into the dugout to hold on to or something like that. And
save the baseball.
Yeah, and forgot no one called time. I don't know. A runner got second. Weird ruling, but it was a wet field that day, so probably not the best day to pitch in your first game back, but he got through it. Now hopefully he can settle in. Obviously not a ton of time to settle in before the year ends. Easily could see him as an Arizona Fall League candidate, along with the likes of Enrique Bradfield Jr., Tavian Josenberger. So actually could have a nice crop of AFL guys this year for the Orioles, and Nick wrote a good article about that recently. So yeah, I'm just excited to see him back on the mound. I think as long as he gets his stuff back, which from behind the scenes clips we've seen he has, then I fully expect him to be right in the mix as one of these awesome pitching prospects that the Orioles had developed. Maybe because of the missed time and 40-man roster rules, maybe he's a guy you kind of fast track as a reliever, but I think at least to start 2026, you're going to see him extended out to a starter's role. And my hitter for this week is going to be Silas Ardway, who is in AAA as like the third catcher, basically. And just wanted to shout him out because he's played in 19 games, has 58 plate appearances, and he is batting .333 with a .916 OPS. It's completely not sustainable whatsoever because he has a .469 BABIP, striking out 32.8% of the time. But hey, I'm going to shout him out for the 144 WRC plus while he's got it. And he is showing more power at AAA than he ever has in his career. It could be just a fluky thing, but a 204 ISO, 2 doubles, 3 homers. Walk rate, we know, will be better than the 6.9% he has right now because he is a walk god. But just for such a good defensive catcher to put up these kind of offensive numbers, if he could ever figure out how to even come close to these, I think he'd be a extremely capable backup catcher in the major leagues.
I like it. I want to see him up in the major leagues with the Orioles at least once, just because his dad was an Oriole for a brief amount of time. And I think that's a pretty cool story. My guys this week, I'm going to go down for my hitter, utility man, Braden Smith, down in Delmarva, 13th round pick this year out of Oklahoma State. Just want to show him some love because, all the draft picks, of course, as they do every year, they're hitting down in Delmarva, playing very well, highlight real plays. Braden Smith hasn't gotten as much playing time as some of the other guys, Ike Irish and Aloy and others, but he's off to a good start. He hit his first career home run last week, went 3 for 10. He's hitting almost 300 on the year with an 811 OPS. It's only 7 games and not the year, but again, just someone who's not a huge ceiling there. We talked about after the draft, but he's just a personal favorite of mine, and I like the swing. It's very aesthetically pleasing swing when he gets into one and sends one out there in the right field. It's a lot of fun to watch. Just forewarning, I'm going to put him in this segment whenever I can over the next couple of years as he climbs up through the system. And then my pitcher, I know we just shouted him out recently as part of a group of these relievers down in Delmarva for their performance, but I want to shout out Joe Glassie again, just because looking at his numbers, another 4 2/3 innings in relief last week, 2 hits, no runs, no earned runs, no walks, 5 strikeouts. So he's pitched 22 innings this year for Delmarva, and he hasn't walked a single guy. I don't know if we mentioned that last time or not. I missed it though. No walks. He's pitched 31 total innings between Delmarva and the FCL. He has 1 walk on the year. He's a 24-year-old UDFA, The numbers are great. He could also be cut at the end of the year. We've seen a lot of guys put up big numbers, ended up getting released. I think he sticks around. I wrote little blurbs on all the UDFA guys from last year, a couple weeks ago, and Glassy was 92, 93 in college, 20 inches of IVB, 5 pitches, and he hasn't walked. Go back multiple years. He doesn't walk anybody. He walked 12 guys between the draft league, the Cape Cod League, and his final year at Illinois in 66 innings. So hopefully he gets a shot next year. Maybe bump him up a little aggressively to AA next year and see what he's got.
I'm going to stick with Delmarva as the lineup for my hitter. RJ Austin had a really nice week against Kannapolis last week, hitting safely in all 4 games in which he appeared, including two hit efforts back-to-back, and a 2-for-5, 3 RBI performance on August 19th. That was followed by a 2-for-4 performance on August 21st. Austin, the Orioles' 3rd-round pick out of Vanderbilt in this summer's draft, is off to a solid start in his professional career. 10 for 29 through 9 games of the Shorebirds was as good for a .345 batting average with 3 RBIs, 2 doubles, and 4 stolen bases in 5 attempts. And then my pitcher this week is Jack Crowder. Crowder, a 9th rounder last year out of Illinois, was at Delmarva for much of this summer and put up numbers that, frankly, from a back of the baseball card perspective, weren't eye-popping. Was moved up to Aberdeen, and he has been very good there, and he had an excellent week last week as the Ironbirds took on the Brooklyn Cyclones. Combined in 2 relief outings, Crowder posted 8 scoreless innings with 10 strikeouts to no walks with 5 hits, and that included a 5-inning relief effort on August 19th in which he struck out 7 batters and scattered 3 hits. For Crowder this year, between low A and high A, the ERA still sitting a little bit high at 5.27, but he's fanned 75 batters and 68 in the 3rd innings pitched over that time period. And for that does it for this week. So we will be back later on this week to recap the Dominican Summer League season. You're not going to want to miss that. In the meantime, you can check out our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky, and Twitch. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up today, become a member of our community. You can join to $3, $5, or $10 levels and have access to bonus weekly shows from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list. And in fact, our top 50 update for the month of September is just around the corner. So be sure to sign up now, become a patron, have access to that and a whole lot more. So you're not going to want to miss that. Head over to patreon.com today to sign up and become a member. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.